Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. I hope you enjoyed the previous video on seeing the interface difference, appearance and what to install in Comfy and Grasshopper. In today's video, we'll be looking at the nodes, the components, how do we connect them to each other, what are the color coding, how do we group it, how do we get an image output from Comfy and things like that, right? So let's get right into it. Let me first start with Grasshopper. So let's say you want to take any component. So you can go to that particular tab. Let's say I want to make a sphere. So I generally go to surface, primitive, and I take sphere, right? Now this, you can't see it. You will see that in Rhino viewport. For example, if I click here, you will see that the sphere is generated here. Right now, we are not looking so much into geometry. Maybe I can reduce this a little bit so I can keep it here. Okay, that's good. So you see what's happening in Rhino as well. Now, let's say this is a sphere component that I have taken. Like I said, always read. So basically, when each component, either it could be with Grasshopper or Comfy, always read what it is asking. And each of them has an input and an output, right? Some people like to call these as batteries, like plus and minus of a battery. So always read, right? If you just keep your mouse, it will tell you what it wants or what it is that it needs. For example, in this case, the radius of the sphere is 1 and that's what it is, right? And 1 means for Grasshopper, it means a number. It doesn't really work with units. The units come from Rhino. So if you have kept these units as meters, this works with meters. If you keep it with centimeters, it works with centimeter or millimeter and so on and so forth, right? Now, let's say you want to connect this to something else. For example, I want to divide this surface, right? Now, the way to connect it, let me on bifocals so you also know what component I am using. So if you want to connect anything, if you click or take your mouse near the semicircular things, you will see a small wire coming below my cursor, right? You can just take it and snap it, right? It's so simple. You can just take it and snap it. It's very simple, right? But you cannot remove it. And even if I do the reverse way, it doesn't remove it. So the way to remove any connection in Grasshopper, you have to hold your control key on your keyboard, which gives you a red arc and a minus above that particular arc, and then you can remove the connection. It's not very intuitive. I understand you should have been able to directly select it, but it's fine. So to directly connect, to be able to remove, hold control. Then if you want to connect it to multiple, for example, let's say this has to go here, this has to go here as well. If you want it to go here, that's fine. You can connect one output to multiple inputs. Doesn't really matter. But if you have to connect multiple inputs to one output, then you have to use shift on your keyboard. For example, let's say I use another component. Okay, so something like cylinder, right? And I want both of them to be divided into same points. But either I can use this. Right now I'm not using anything. You can see my hand here. I'm not using anything. But if I hold shift on my keyboard, then I can connect multiple geometries into one particular input. So to connect, you just have to connect. If you have to use multiple geometries, you use shift. If you have to remove a wire, you use control. Okay. So these three things you have to remember. Then you get to see multiple wire types as well. Let's say, you make a longer script, right? And you want some of the wires to be seen, not seen. What you can do, you can right click on that input, right? It's very important to know where you are right clicking in Grasshopper. Each of them gives you a different settings, right? For example, if I right click on surface, I can go to wire display and I can either say faint it, so it becomes like this light wire, or I can say wire display hidden. So now you will see this kind of a Wi-Fi kind of a logo, which means that there is a wire connection, but it is hidden. In Comfy, this was this particular icon, which was toggle link visibility. In Grasshopper, you got to right click on that particular component, go to wire display, and then go to default. That's mostly how the connection works with Grasshopper, right? Now you might be wondering, Kedar, there are so many components. How do I remember where it is, right? For example, let's say I want to know where this component is. You can hold Control Alt and click on the component, and Grasshopper will tell you where this component is. So it's telling me that it is in the surface, primitive, and there is something called a circle here. And if you directly know, right, let's say you have practiced a lot, there are two ways to take it, right? You can go to surface, primitive, and click on circle, or you can double click on the canvas and you can type circle. It will show you all the components that has the same name. Sphere. It will show you all the components that has sphere in it, right? and then I can take it. So two ways to call out. Either you go to that tab, sub tab, and take it, or you can double click on the canvas and do it. And the same ideology follows in Comfy, right? If I want to take, let's say, load checkpoint model, I can double click and I can take load checkpoint model and done. That's one way of taking it. Or I can even right click, I can go to add node. If you know where it is, I really sometimes don't know where things are here because there are too many things sometimes. Let's say I want to take control net preprocessor, I want to take this component, right? So that's another way of doing it. Either you directly double click or you right click, you say add node and go to that specific folder and take that particular component. Now, similar to Grasshopper, any way to connect it. For example, I take text encode. Now it's very simple to connect it. With Comfy is even easier because you just have to connect the color to color. You don't even have to read it. For example, VAE will not even go here. You see, it becomes like this. It becomes faded. Unless I connect clip to clip, it will not even connect it. So that's, I think, really good with Comfy. I hope Grasshopper implements it. So simple connection is simple and removing is simple. Reverse way. You don't have to use control or shift. You got to connect it. To unconnect, go back. That's it. It's as simple as that with Comfy. With Grasshopper, like I told you, connection, shift and control. And to copy paste, both of them are same. You just have to Control C, Control V, you get this node copied. In Grasshopper also, if I say Control C, Control V, this node gets copied. It's very similar. Then coming to, if you want to rename a particular component, right? For example, let's say I want to rename this. I can right click and instead of divide surface, for example, let's say, this is dividing something into the base of a columns, right? I can rename this as column base and you have to use this paint bucket. And now you will see the name of this component becomes column face, right? It is divide surface, but this is for you to understand what this component is doing, right? Similarly, in Comfy, let's say this is a positive prompt. I can double click on it and I can just say positive. And now this, I will always know that this is a positive prompt. Of course, with Comfy, you can also change color. If I click on it, you will see this gray color. If I click on this, you can change the color of that particular node. So let's say I keep it green. Generally, I like to keep positive prompt green. You can change it to whatever color you want so that you can visually understand what this component means. With Grasshopper, you really can't change the color of a component. Even if you try, it just either you see it or you don't see it. But I think that is helpful for Grasshopper because it is geometry oriented. For example, in this case, in Comfy, like I said, you can give it any of these particular colors. But with Grasshopper, it comes with 4 predefined colors. And the way I think of these colors for this node is like, traffic signal, where green means go, orange means to wait and check what's happening, and red means error, right? For instance, let's say I connect this cylinder to a point component, right? It will throw me an error. 100% there will be an error, right? Now, why is there an error? It says data conversion failed from surface to point. Because Grasshopper works from geometry to geometry, you can't suddenly convert a surface into a point, right? That's why there is an error. So this one you can say is stop, like there is an error. Then there are sometimes other errors that come which look like orange color, right? That generally sometimes means like the data is missing. So if anything looks like orange, always understand that there is data kind of missing in it. And if things are working, instead of green in traffic signal, they look gray here. So if something looks gray, that means they are working. And now you will see, let me delete this sphere. You see this cylinder here, right? Inside of a Rhino. If I don't want to see this, I can right click and I can say preview off. Then it becomes a darker gray. So if I on it, you will see this as light color. That means that geometry is seen. We are only hiding the geometry. We are not really removing it. For example, let's say now we have cylinder. We are dividing it into points, right? I don't want to see the cylinder. I only want to see the points. So, or the other way around. I want to see cylinder and not the points. I can right click and I can say preview off. So I can only see the cylinder when I click on it. So this becomes a dark gray. If you want, you can also take notes of all of these in Grasshopper and Comfy, right? To do that, in Grasshopper, you use something called as panel. So you double click and you can say panel. And here I can say, red means error, orange means data is missing, gray or rather, let's say light gray, working well, and dark gray, geometry hidden. So you can take notes as well. You can use this component called panel, and you can keep on taking notes wherever you want. Similarly, you can take notes in Comfy as well. You can take notes using a component called notes. So you double click, you type notes or note, and you can take notes here. You can say connect wires of same color in a component. Whatever notes you want to take, right? I'm just making some notes up here so that you can take notes here as well whenever you're working. Or let's say you're sharing a file with somebody who wants to know what exactly is happening. So you can use panel to write in Grasshopper. You can also use Scribble. I don't really like to use Scribble, but you can use a panel in Grasshopper and note in Comfy, right? So you will see that there are a lot of similarities that come with each of these tools, right? And we are only starting to scratch the surface, and why I think both of them are very, very similar. Now, let's go next. Let me keep this here. And always, please try to organize whatever file you are working with. Even if it is a simple script, always try to organize it so that you get a habit of it, right? Otherwise, I know some people who like to work like this. They kind of make a mess and they only don't know what really is happening. And this goes on for both of the tools, right? So always try to organize it. Now let's look at, let's say there are components which are very far away. And right, for example, I have a component here. Let's say I push all of this here. I have a component called sphere and it's here, right? And I want to connect it like this, right? It looks nice. Of course, it looks nice. What I can also do, and let's say I want to then connect this sphere somewhere else as well. For example, there is another divide surface that goes here, right? And these two are here. Now, this is a bit confusing, right? The things are overlapping. What you can also always do is you can use a relay component. What you can do is you can always double click on a wire, or you can double click here and type relay. You know, when in marathon, one person is passing this bat or this rod to somebody else, this is what relay does. So I can connect sphere to relay, and I can connect from relay here, which basically allows you to keep your scripts very neat and tidy. You can always double click on a wire and then a relay is generated. For example, now let's say there is another divide surface here. I can connect it here. Now this is much more neater or visually easy for me to understand. Similarly, in Comfy, here it's called relay, it's called reroute here. For example, let's say I drag from clip, I can say reroute, and then I can connect it here. If I say Control C, Control V, I can then again connect it from here. So here in Comfy, it's called reroute. In Grasshopper, it's called relay. This the job is same. They are just pushing whatever is there inside it further. So let's say it's a long script. This really helps. Now let's see how to group things, right? Always it's really important to group things. So for example, let's say in Grasshopper, right now I'm going to move this here. So these three components and these all are two separate things. Maybe one is to create a skin, the other is to create facade members. So I'm going to select this, basically drag in and do Control G. Then I can select this and I can do Control G, right? And then you can also name that particular group. So I can right click on that group and let's say, like I said, this is facade connection, and this one, let's say, is only skin. Okay. And you can also change the color of the group. So you can right click on the group, you can say color, and let's say you want some other color, let's say it's like pink, and this one is let's say I keep it red, right? And if you want any time for next time, let's say you want to make this always as red when you group, you can say make color default. So, and now let's say I Control C, Control V this, I will group this. Now automatically next time this group is going to be of red color. So that's how you can group and you can name it, and you can move this entire group wherever you want it. Now let's say you can also add things. For example, let's say Control C, Control V. This particular component you want to add to this group. What you can do, click on this component, then right click on the group and say add to group. So the group extends and that particular component comes inside of that particular group. This entire thing goes same with Comfy. Just Control C, Control V, whatever you're doing. So for example, let's say these three become one group. To select it, you can't drag in Comfy, right? You have to hold Control on your keyboard. Okay. With Grasshopper, you can simply drag it. With Comfy, you can't do that. So if you have to drag anything, you have to use Control on your keyboard. So use Control and then click, and then you can press Control G. You can name the group whatever it is. Let's say it's beginner guide. Okay. You can also rename, change the color of the group. Same again on top. You can click on top, and then let's say this case, I have to zoom out. Let's say this brown color, whatever color you want, you can also name it. And similar to Grasshopper, where you can add particular node to a group, you can do that. What you have to do is you little bit put this inside, then you right click and say fit group to nodes, and then this will come inside. Little more, I guess. Fit group to nodes, and then that particular node comes inside. You can't say add to group, you have to take it inside, because here you can always move things in and out. With Grasshopper, once you make a group, it will not let it go out of that group. It's very stingy that way. So here you have to take it inside a little bit. Let's say it's even if half outside, you right click and then you say fit group to nodes, and that's it. Okay. Then you can always off and on any particular node or component that you want. For example, let's say I take this sphere component. I want to off this. So you can right click and you can say where it says enabled, you say disabled, and now it becomes this dull color, which means now this is not working, right? In Comfy, it's called bypass. So I click on this, I right click and I say bypass, where are you? Yeah. So it becomes this again dull color, which means they both are not usable right now. So even if you take a wire from it or not, these are not going to work. In Grasshopper, you can enable or disable. In Comfy, it's called bypass. So let me bypass it again. And you can bypass multiple things. You can drag things here, and you can you can just Control B and things get bypassed. Now here also in Grasshopper, you can drag the entire thing. You can hit your mouse wheel and then you can say disabled. So this entire group gets disabled. Let me drag again, click the mouse wheel and say enable. So they get enabled. As simple as that. Now you might be seeing one thing extra in Grasshopper is that in your case, this might be looking green or red. The geometries, whatever you have done, could be green and red. Now the way to change this color is that you go top right hand side and you see this icons, one which is like half orange and half gray. Click on that icon and here you will see those colors. In this case, in your case, it should be red and green. So what I did was when it's normal, I made it white, basically 255 everything, and gave it a transparency alpha value, because right now you see here in this particular case, there is like a sphere, there are points, there is cylinder. So to always know what is inside it, right? And then I make this pink, like whatever color you wanted when it's selected. So basically it means like whenever I click on it, that particular color is highlighted. And if I don't, it is white color, right? But what happens in Grasshopper, you have to change it every time you open a file, but you don't want to do that. Then what you do, you go to File, go to Preferences, and here you go to Viewport. Now here it says Default Template Material. So even if you have made this white and pink, here you will see whatever those colors are, red and green, right? All you have to do, just drag this on top of this. Drag this on top of this. So every time you open Grasshopper, these will be your standard color templates and it will not make it back to red and green, right? So that's one thing extra in Grasshopper because there is geometry involved in it. Then I already showed you that with, let's unbypass it. So again, Control B. I already showed you that if you drag anything in Comfy, you will get a list of suggestions, right? For example, now it's telling me maybe you want to use any of this. Maybe K-Sampler is a plugin that you want to use. And because we didn't have that in Grasshopper, we installed a plugin called Quick Connection, which again, if I drag it in Grasshopper, I again get a list of components which I want. Maybe it's like converting or joining those lines. You see, now I have joined these lines. Simple in Grasshopper. So again, I'm trying to create as many similarities as possible between these two tools. Then one thing that Grasshopper is it's very crucial for Grasshopper is numbers, right? Because it works with units. For example, the radius of this sphere right now is 1, right? If I want to make the radius of this 2, I can right click, go to set number. That's really, really problematic. We can create something called as number slider. So if you double click on the canvas and type 2, you can just connect it and the radius of the circle becomes big, and I can make it less or more, however you want, right? And there are multiple ways how you can edit this as well. So once you make a number slider, double click on the number slider, then you will get this number slider window. Now here what you can do, you can change things. If you want a floating number, basically a decimal point, you can keep here. Let's say you want number of 10.5, right? Now here the decimal is 3 values. I can make it 2 values. If you want only even numbers, we can say only even numbers, only odd numbers, or things like that. One thing that I like to do always, because let's say you take a number slider of 2, it will always end till 10, right? Or if I take a number slider of 25, it will end till 100. So what I generally like to do, I give a minimum and maximum. For example, I say 0 is less than 2.5, that is less than 25.0. So now it will stick to 2.5, the minimum becomes 0 and the maximum becomes 25. I like to do that generally if I know an exact value or if I know the limits, right? For example, let's say it's a floor, it's the height of the building, right? You can say that, okay, the minimum has to be 2.1 and the maximum has to be 3. So I can say 2.1 less than whatever, let's say 2.4, which is kind of 8 feet, and that is 3. So now the minimum becomes 2.1, which is around 7 feet. Then this becomes 8 feet, and then this becomes 10 feet, right? So this is always helpful to set limit. You use this minimum, and that goes with negative values as well. For example, let's say minus 2.5, that is less than 0, that's less than 2.5. So now this slider becomes between negative 2.5 to positive 2.5. So that's generally another way of doing it, right? Either you double click on it or you can give a limit to it. What is the minimum and maximum and what is the number that you want? Now you might be wondering, no, we can't get numbers in Comfy. You do get. There is something called as a float. So if I double click on it and type float, it's in, there is a component called easy use. So you get this floating numbers, right? For example, let's say I only want to change the CFG or only want to change the steps. We'll see what this is in this particular case sample node, and I want to hide the rest of it. You can do that in Comfy. In Grasshopper, you can't really hide a component. Here in Comfy, if you click on this circle, you see that particular node gets hidden, right? This is helpful when you have a long script. You don't want to see the entire thing, right? But if you want to only change one value, for example, I only want to keep changing the steps. So I can connect the float to steps. It has to go the other way around. I think steps doesn't go. It maybe goes to CFG. Okay. So if I only want to keep changing the CFG, I can minimize this. I can rename it. As we know, I can make this as CFG scale, enter, and I can only keep changing this value. Let's say now it's 10, rather than me having, so this is much more cleaner to look at. I can also drag this from the corner, make it small, push this here. So this becomes nice to look at. If you want to know, if you know exactly what to change, then having this as entire setup, or this could be for denoise as well. And any, for example, you can drag things out of it as well. And you can see primitive float for denoise. You can say it for seed as well. Say primitive integer. With seed, you also get what is the next seed. So that's what it is showing. So with Comfy also you get number slider, which are basically called as float. So here it's called float, and in Grasshopper it's called slider. Okay. Now let's say that you want to know what all nodes are present in both of these tools. With Comfy, we already looked at. It's called as nodes map, which shows you how many nodes are present, right? There is case sampler and there is this entire group. So it's telling me that there is a group called beginner guide, which has these 5 components. And then there is case sampler, which has this. Yeah, it has considered reroute as separate. So that's why it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, that's fine. So I click on it again. In Grasshopper, there's no really a good way of finding any particular component. But what you can do, you can go to edit actually, and you can say find. Now here if I type, let's say A, it will show me what all the components are there with that particular name. For example, bifocals, it is telling that it is towards the left side. If I click on it, see, bifocals is here. Then if I want to see where is relay, it's here. If I want to see where is this group, interpolate is here. If I want to see where is the panel, it's here, right? So just type one particular letter and then you will see what is available, all the nodes that you have used in Grasshopper. In Comfy, we get this node map with Grasshopper. This is the way if you want to see. Yeah, so mostly that's it with the interface of Comfy and Grasshopper. In the next video, we will create our first image from Comfy using some kind of a reference from Grasshopper, right? I hope you like this video. Thank you for your time. Please do like, share and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.